So starting and living in a foreign country is full of ups and downs, okay? Now in this channel, I'm going to give you the honest truth, okay? I'm going to give you my experiences and I'm going to talk about in this video the biggest challenges that I faced in my first year abroad, and you're likely to face too. Hi everyone, I'm Paul. I left the UK way back in 2005, and for the past 19 years, I have been living and working abroad in search of a better life. Now today, I'm going to begin with this topic of the biggest challenges that you'll face. I have a little piece of paper with a few notes that I've made, and the first challenge is probably the biggest one for everybody. It is going to be money, okay? So money, of course, is something that we're all trying to get in order to make our lives more comfortable. When you leave your country, the UK specifically, for a future in another country, you're going to need some financial backup, okay? So let me just share quickly about what I did. Back in 2005, after graduating university, I managed to sell my car. So I had a number of part-time jobs at the time, and I had a pretty decent car. It was a Vauxhall Astra, and it was a nice little coupe, right? So kind of like a 3-door. And I managed to pay this car monthly payments with the money I had incoming from my part-time jobs. I managed to sell the car just before I left to Canada, Vancouver, in my first year traveling, and I got about £5,000. Okay, so it's quite a significant amount of money. Now, I thought I was rich, okay? I was like jumping up and down with all this money thinking, Paul, you've made it. It's going to be easy. Well, it wasn't easy, okay? So that £5,000 went towards my working holiday visa, which cost about £500 or £600 through a company called Bunac, okay? B-U-N-A-C. I don't know if they're still about, but they helped me get the Canadian visa. Upon arriving in Canada, it's very important that you have this money available in your bank, at least probably about £2,500, because the country you're going to, they specifically want to see that you've got money to support yourself, you know, for the first few months of travel. So having about £4,500 after paying for the visa, I was well set up. That money was supposed to last me the entire year. I didn't budget, okay? So this was my kind of like immaturity, I guess you could say, lack of experience traveling. I was 23 years old. So at that time, I just went and I basically blew the whole lot within the first 3 months. Okay, so that obviously was a huge problem for me. So it's very important that if you're planning to go away, save your money, all right? Save your money now. Make sure you have some money in your pocket. You need to probably have about £2,500, £3,000, in my opinion. That's the minimum that you should try and have before leaving. Obviously, your circumstances will change depending on your dependents, i.e. wife, partner, children, stuff like that. It was just myself, so at least, you know, after having blew that money, it was my responsibility to look after myself and only myself. All right, so money, it's a big deal. I know it's very difficult to save right now in the UK, but somehow everybody try to do your best. Life is not all about working, okay? I don't live my life that way. I try to enjoy more what I do for income. I use that to enjoy my life. I don't live to work, okay? That is the worst thing that I can think of. All right, so number one, biggest challenge was money. Let's move on to number two, which links pretty well. Work, okay? If you go on a working holiday visa, you will be legally allowed to get a job in that country. Now, not only can you live there for up to 12 months, or maybe in some countries it's 24 months, you will also have the ability to have as many part-time jobs as you wish. Now, if you want to have a full-time job, or if you want to stay longer than your visa, then you need to be sponsored by the company. That is very, very difficult to do because it's a lot of work for the company to go through, and they might also have to pay some money to sponsor your visa. So I didn't manage to do that. But what I did do was manage to find a number of part-time jobs. Now, at one point in Canada, I had about 3 part-time jobs at the same time. So I was grinding, okay? I was pretty much working most days. But the jobs that I had were very, very interesting. Excuse me, I was doing market research. I was working at a call center. Now, if you can imagine a call center in Canada, a Scottish guy calling your home saying, hey, what's up? I'm Paul, blah, 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 blah. Most Canadians were like, first of all, where are you from? You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm like, I'm from Scotland. So it actually worked to my benefit, doing phone calls, doing research, trying to do, what was I doing? Timeshare. At one point I was selling timeshare, and I know you've probably got a bad opinion about people who do that, but genuinely I tried to be as honest as I could with the people I was talking to. Anyway, you're legally allowed to work. Now, the easiest job to get initially in a new country is probably working at a supermarket. Okay, so I did a lot of that in the UK when I was a student at university. But in a foreign country, that will be the easiest job for you to get. Doing things like market research or, timeshare, you probably have to be a little bit good at your sales techniques, and you can learn that on the way. There's more money involved because there's commission for everything that you sell. So that's the reason I went into that kind of field. Nothing really to do with my major. My major was business, but I was just looking for money to make me or help me pay my rent, okay, and survive in that country. Okay, so now you've got you have got money, which is number one problem. Number two is your work. You need to get a job because that initial £2,500, £3,000, let's say, that you have, you need to keep that at all costs. You should not be dipping into it if you can help it. Now, what I did for the first 3 months in Canada was go through £5,000, okay? I was partying, I was having a great social life, I was having fun. I was like a tourist. But the problem is, when you have a working holiday visa, it's two parts, right? You're working to support your travel. You're not just traveling. And that was the problem that I had. I was just traveling, having fun, and trying to meet people. You have to have that balance. Everything you do in life has to be a balance, okay? So that is my advice to you today, is to find that balance in whatever you do. Obviously, if you do too much of one thing and not enough of the other, your life's kind of off keel. So it's always better mentally to have that balance in your life. So after getting my part-time jobs, I was able to support myself for the rest of my journey in Canada. I was able to have income that would allow me to travel, to get some food, pay my accommodation. Now, speaking of accommodation, let's move on to point number 3. My biggest advice, and I cannot say how important this is really, really huge. If you're traveling alone like I was way back then in Canada, you need to go to a hostel, okay? Do not go to a hotel. Maybe your first night at a hotel is a good idea, just to be safe, but after that, you really need to try and get a hostel. And the reason that I say hostel is because you need to make friends. When you go to a hotel, in the most part, the only person you're talking to is the receptionist at the front desk. Once you get your key card, you're into your private room. And hey, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic, right? It's luxury. It's nice to have privacy. Of course you want privacy, right? You're in a new country, you're uncomfortable. You want to relax. You want to recharge your batteries before going out and seeing the country. Hotel room is good for one night. Then you must get a hostel, because in that hostel, you're going to have the best chance entirely of your entire time there to make new friends, make connections. And not only will these connections help you with your social life in that new country and help you make some friends in that new country, they will also help you find work. This is how I got most of my part-time jobs. It was word of mouth. Maybe one of them was working at the research company, and then suddenly they're like, Paul, there's a vacancy, you want to come? And I'm like, oh, of course, I need the money. So that is a great way of networking. In a hostel, the best thing is almost every single day there's new people. There's different people coming in from different countries. And a lot of the time they're solo travelers. They're backpackers, right? They are probably going to stay in the hostel for 2 or 3 nights, maybe sometimes a week. Well, I actually stayed in a hostel for 3 months. Now, that's not really that usual, okay? But for 3 months, I stayed in a wonderful, wonderful hostel in Vancouver, Canada. I may as well tell you the name of it, right? If you want to search it. It was called the C&N Backpacker Hostel in Main Street, Vancouver. Now, the area itself was not great, but as a Scotsman, you know, I'm pretty streetwise, I'm pretty savvy. No fear, folks. Don't show fear. As soon as you show fear, bad things come your way, right? So be confident, head up, chin out, and just tackle these things head on. I never had a problem once, okay? So it was pretty cheap to stay there way back in 2006. So yeah, hostel was where I stayed for 3 months. Now that also is a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is, of course, I met so many people from different countries, specifically Koreans, Japanese people. I met Canadians, I met Australians, I met Brits just like me, I met Americans, etc. There were so many different nationalities in that place. In a hostel, you'll have a shared kitchen, you'll have a shared bathroom, and you'll also have a shared dorm. Now, there's two options. You can go into the cheapest option, which is a dorm with 4 or 6 people, or you can go into a shared room. A shared room is when there's only 2 beds in that room. You can pay the full fee by yourself and have the whole room to yourself, but it's too expensive when you're on a working holiday visa. If you want to go into the shared option with just 2 of you, it's still more money. That's more money than I was willing to pay. So I actually stayed in a room of 4. Now, you're living and sleeping with people you don't know, okay? And in the most part, every single night, there's a new person coming in. Sometimes everybody changes, but I didn't, okay? For 3 months, I was there. So it was a little uncomfortable at first, but actually, as you soon realize, that it is just a place to sleep. You can wake up the next morning, get your shower, and you can go out, try and get a job. You can look, you can meet up with people in the hostel, go a little, tour to the park or some site that you want to see. There's always something going on. It's a great place for community, okay? It's a great place to talk and chat, share experiences, share the good things and the bad things of the city or of that country. So it actually helps a lot. Now, the downside about the hostel is, of course, after 3 months, you are tired of meeting new people. Now, that's true. I'm a very sociable person, but I love my own time too. So coming into that environment for 3 months, it was non-stop social interaction, okay? It can get a little bit tiring, especially if you make a lot of good friends, but then they move on or they go home. So it's like stop, start, stop, start. One of the biggest problems I had was the shared bathroom. Now, that doesn't mean you're sharing with other people. It means you have to wait in line to get into that bathroom. So sometimes you're waiting quite a long time in the morning, especially for a shower. What I would do usually was stick my head out the window, the door. And as soon as I see that gap where I can run, I'm running to that shower room, right, with my towel and my change of clothes. And you want to get in there as fast as you can because it is so busy in the morning. I think there was only 2 showers on each floor, and there was about 3 floors in this hostel. So a pretty busy place. They had a communal room where you would sit. There's a TV in there. There's a table. There's some magazines. It's basically a place with some sofas and couches that you can sit and just sit down and say, hey, what's up? And you start talking to new people. So a wonderful, wonderful place. I loved staying there, but I would not recommend staying there for the long term. I met a Japanese guy in that hostel, and he was an awesome, awesome friend of mine, a friend for years after. He was actually a chef. Now, I got a little bit lucky. My advice to you all is try to find a roommate, if you can, who is a chef. Because not only will that person be able to cook wonderful, wonderful food if they so wish, but they'll also bring some food home from their restaurant. Okay, so that's exactly what happened to me. Aki was an Italian and French chef. Obviously, he's Japanese. And he would often bring back some amazing food like king crab's legs, stuff like that. Okay, so for someone like me who was on a very tight budget, it was amazing. Okay, so I had a great time sharing with him. We chose to live in an apartment. And in that apartment, it was right on English Bay in Vancouver, which looked onto the beach. It was a beautiful area, but it was expensive. It's about 1,000 Canadian dollars at the time, which was quite a lot. So it's $500 each. Now, for me to pay that, I had to have 3 part-time jobs. This is what I had to do. But he was one of my best friends at the time that I met, and I couldn't stay in the hostel anymore. So it was a wonderful change for me and well worth the money. All right, so that's your accommodation. We have spoken about so far money, huge, huge problem, right, for most people, indeed. We've spoken about work with your working holiday visa. And we've spoken about accommodation with the hostel. Please remember, hostel, not hotel. Right, let's move on to the next thing, which is probably the biggest challenge of all, which is loneliness, okay? Now, often when you go to a new country or a new place, you're going to feel like everyone is kind of looking at you, or like you're an alien, like you stand out, like you're very different. Well, that is where the hostel comes in handy, okay? So that loneliness will quickly disappear as soon as you walk into that hostel. It's full of sociable people, all right? At the time back then, I used to smoke, okay? I don't smoke anymore, but at that time, I used to smoke. And the best place for me to make connections and make friends was the smoking balcony. So in this hostel, I would go out to have a cigarette, and it's full of different people who are all smoking. But you'll find a lot of the time that smokers in general are so sociable because they're used to being around other people, having a cigarette, making small talk. So for me, that was an amazing experience to make some friends. My loneliness quickly disappeared. Now, in that hostel, I think I mentioned in my very first video, I met a bunch of friends from Korea at the time, and I kind of walked up the stairs to go to my bedroom. There was a round table at the top, and I think it was like 9 or 10 Koreans just sitting in a circle. I didn't know where they're from at the time, and I just kind of invited myself to sit with them because I was just curious, what they're eating and what they're doing. And in a hostel, you kind of get the confidence to do these things because, everyone's pretty open and pretty welcoming. And they're also new to the country too, so they're looking for some help, same as I was. And in that setting, I was able to try some of the food that they were having, try some of the traditional drink they were having. They were more than happy to share with me. And from that little connection, they became some of my best friends that I ever made. So yeah, my advice to you all is get your guard down, okay? Get your guard away when you're traveling and just put yourself out there. Try and be as confident as you can, because sometimes you will make a wonderful, wonderful friend that you'll keep for a lifetime. And some of these people that I met way back when are still my friends today. All right, so it's an awesome, awesome experience. Everything that I'm going to share with you on this channel is through my experience. It's nothing but the truth, okay? Everything that I'm telling you is what I've done. It's what I've experienced. I've walked it in my own shoes, okay? So these are some of the biggest challenges that you're going to face when you go to a foreign country. Now, going back to the subject of money, I just want to share a really, really difficult experience that I had. But this was something that I promised myself that I would do, okay? Before I went away for the year, I promised myself that I would not call home and ask my parents for money, okay? So that was something that I had to stand for. It's kind of like growing up. It's maturing. It's all about looking after yourself. I really, really didn't want to call home and ask for money because to me, that means I've failed. One specific week, one of my part-time jobs went bankrupt. Okay, now they didn't tell the staff. So I got a check for that week, that month of work, which is quite a lot of money at the time. I think it was about 40 hours that I did in the month. Not so much, but enough to help me pay my rent. But all of that money was given to me a check. And what you would do back in those days is go to a place that you can cash the check almost instantly, right? It's not a bank account. It's just an instant give the check. They give you the money, but they take a fee. So I think it's something like, I don't know, let's just say about $50 they take, and you get maybe the $500 from your $550 check, cash. Now, upon going to cash that check, they told me this check is bounced. Basically, there's no money in the business account. I found out a day later the company was closing due to bankruptcy and they had no way of paying me. Okay, so at that moment, I am in a big, big hole and I have a big problem because I can still pay my rent, but I have no money for the next week for food. And literally, I mean no money. I think I had about $7 or $8 Canadian. So what I did for that week was I went to Safeway in Canada. I bought a block of cheese, a long block of cheese, and I bought a loaf of bread. And during that whole week, without telling my roommate, okay, who was a chef, that I had problems with money and I had problems with, eating and stuff like that, I just got through it. Okay, I have like toasted cheese sandwiches. I would have cheese sandwiches. I would have a piece of bread. I'd have a piece of cheese. And somehow for that week, I got through it. I think I lost some weight. It was a mental challenge. I think we had some coffee in the apartment, so I was okay that way. And after that week, I almost broke down, right, to my roommate. I was so relieved to get my next paycheck from one of my other jobs. And Aki said to me, he's like, why didn't you tell me? And I'm like, man, how am I supposed to tell you? To get money from you it doesn't make me feel better. It doesn't actually help me. Getting over this helps me. And I've never forgotten that experience, even today at 42 years old in South Korea, as a university professor, helping other students, helping people with my experiences, trying to give confidence, trying to give motivation. That right there was something that I had to overcome alone, okay? Now, I don't know if you will understand that or you'll relate to that, maybe struggles in your life, but life is not supposed to be easy, right? Nobody said it was going to be easy. And I think life is very, very difficult. And it still is difficult for me in many different situations. But I always go back to that time. And that lets me know, Paul, you can get through that. You can get through anything. Okay, so that's just something that I wanted to share with you. A little kind of personal anecdote, little something that I went through and I experienced that helped me on my way. To this day, and ever since then, I've never ever asked my parents for money. I never ever would. I would do anything I could other than do that. And that's something that I'm very proud of and something that I don't regret doing. So that cheese for that week, believe it or not, I still like cheese. I still love eating cheese. It hasn't affected me negatively in that way, but it was pretty tough. Right, folks, that is the biggest challenges that I faced in my first year traveling. Hopefully some of the things that I spoke to you about today will help you on your way. Thank you all so much so far for your comments and your views in the other videos. We're doing pretty well so far. As I say, I'm always here to help you. I'm always happy to help you. And if you have learned anything from this video, then that's a success for me. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.